Hi there, it's Tiffany from Daisy Farm Crafts, and today I'm going to do a quick tutorial for you for this window pane puffs baby blanket. I made this for my almost to be born very first grandchild, and I just am so excited that I finally get to make little blessing blankets for these little ones that are coming my way. Just over the moon excited. Peyton's Beehive Baby Sport is the yarn that I used for this. It's really, really soft. It's a 3-weight light yarn. It has nylon in it, so it's an acrylic and nylon. I'm trying to see where up here. Acrylic and nylon. So it kind of makes it just a little bit softer than just regular acrylic. The equivalent to this is Bernat Softy Baby. So I kind of like this one a little bit better, but it was really tricky to work with because you use a really small hook for me. This was a G4 mm, and actually it's up a hook size. It calls for an F 3.75. So I went up just a little bit. Anyway, simple stitching. I'll show you the puff. These are single crochet and chain. This is just our classic mesh stitch, but I loved how it gave this raised berry look. Also, the back is a little bit more subtle. It's not exactly the same. I mean, a little bit more subtle, the puffs, but pretty much looks the same, if you can tell. This is a mesh stitch border, so same stitch all the way around. I just wanted to make this really flat. So anyway, let's get started with the tutorial. Okay, because that yarn is so tiny, I'm going to go ahead and do our tutorial with Caron's Simply Soft, which is a 4-weight yarn, and I'm changing to the color blue so you can see what I'm doing. And I changed to an H hook. Now, actually I didn't want to change to this quite yet. I'm going to go ahead and use this G for my starting chain, and so you might want to think about that with this pattern too, because the base of the mesh stitch kind of, well, you'll see as we go, leaves a gap when you have to skip that chain 1 stitch. So I'm trying to get the base chain just a little bit tighter so I didn't have a saggy end on my blanket. All right, the pattern repeat is any multiple of the number 10. So let's do a swatch of 30. Okay, I've got 30 chains and they're kind of tight, but that's okay for this first row. Here's why. Let's begin in the second chain from the hook. And actually my 30th chain kind of got super tight on me. Let me redo that one. Here we go. Let's start in the second chain from the hook. So never counting this one that's around the hook, we count 1, 2. We're going to begin in that second chain. I'm just going to work underneath the top loop with a single crochet. Now I'll chain 1, and I'm going to skip 1 and work into the next chain space. Now let's repeat this all the way across the row. Skipping 1 chain, working single crochet into the next, then chaining 1, skipping 1, working single crochet into the next. Okay, it should work out that your very last stitch at the end of the chain is a single crochet. Now go ahead and switch up your hook size. And hopefully we've got that base row just nice and snug. Let's chain 1 and turn. Now, still sort of, if you want to look at the top of your chain, it's still the second little V that we're going to be working under. Here's our chain 1. Here's the very first stitch, so sometimes that can be hard to see. Here's our single crochet that we want to work right into. And of course, yes, it's going to be just a little bit tighter because we've changed up our hook size. Now chain 1. Okay, I've got a little something on my hook here. Hold on. I'm going to switch that up. Try a different one. There we go. Okay, chain 1, skip this little V, work into the next one. We're skipping over the chain space, working into the single crochets. Okay. Now we're going to repeat this until we have a total of 5 single crochets worked and 4 chains, or the first 9 stitches, because on every 10th stitch we are going to be working a puff around the chain. So here, what I'm saying is, here's single crochet 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's my 5th one. But I've got 4 chains in between them, so 5 plus 4 is 9. And now around the next chain space. Now we will work around the chain space. Let's put that puff. So yarn over, insert your hook underneath the chain and into the chain space. Pull up a loop, yarn over, and let's do it again. And yarn over one more time. For the blanket, I did this for a total of 3 times the yarning over. You also can play with that number if you want them, and it, you know, say you've chosen different yarn and they're not popping out as much as you'd like, you can yarn over more times. Or say it's too big, you can yarn over just 2 times. It's totally up to you. Just make the puff. Now, look for that very next single crochet. Don't forget it. Don't accidentally come over here. This starts again, stitch number 1. Okay. And that will help with that puff to pop out just a little bit. Then chain 1, skip chain, work into the single crochet. And I promise you this first row will just be the hardest because, like I said, we did that smaller hook. But you'll be happy when you finish your whole blanket that it's not sagging on the bottom. This stitch tends to do that, this mesh stitch. Okay, all right. You work 1, 3, 5, 2 more, get your puff, and then I'll meet you at the end of the row. How'd you do on that second puff? Hopefully this is kind of what your work looks like here. You've got those 2 puffs. The side that's facing away from you before you turn is going to puff out a little bit more. This is more the flat side. Let's chain 1 and turn. Now on this row, you actually don't work any puffs. It's just straight back to the mesh stitch. And you'll be really happy because now our stitches are a little bit looser and you can kind of cruise along. And let me show you what happens when you get to the puff. Try and think of it this way, is that the puff took the place of a chain 1. So we'll still work a single crochet to one side of it. Now let's chain 1, over it or across it and come and find that single crochet on the other side of it. That's how you'll work across that puff. So puffs take the place of a chain 1 space. There we go. Let's do that again. So single crochet stitch is right there to the one side of it. I'm going to chain across. That's the puff stitch right there. So it looks, sometimes that little single crochet can kind of crunch down tight. Look for maybe those 2 little V's to go into, and hopefully that will help you stay on track. We need those puffs to stay lined up for, we're going to work 7 rows of them before we do a whole line across. Not 7 rows, 4, 6, I can't remember. I mean, there'll be 7 total puffs. Chain 1 at the end of every row. Okay, this is a puff row. Not yet. Here we go. Okay, this is one thing that I would always do just to double check when the blanket's small. Let's make sure we have those 5 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Got it. Now the chain space is right there. Here's the puff one more time. Yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, and pull up a loop. One more time, or as many times as you'd like. Now yarn over and kind of keep those loose. Pull all the way through. There's your puff. Look for that next single crochet. There we go. Then chain 1. All right, I think you've got this. Okay, work this until you have 7 little puffs, and then I'll show you the row of all puffs, which I'm pretty sure you can figure out. That we'll just be doing alternating single crochet. Oh, see, look at that. I started talking and I forgot to do my puff. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got my 5 single crochets there. Here's my puff. And you know, sometimes as I was making the blanket, I could get away from counting after a while because my fingers would feel the puff on the back as we went along, and so I kind of knew it was coming. So it became really methodical, and once you get into the rhythm, you won't have to count so much. But there should be, for sure, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at the end as well. Then everything stays nice and straight. Okay, you've got this. Work away, and I'll come back when it's time to do the row of all puffs. So here's what I mean by having the 7 puffs all made. Now I'm working on row 15 of just the mesh stitch. And so row 16 is where we will have all puffs and single crochets. And then the pattern just repeats from there. So, okay. I'll meet you back at that puff row. All right, here we go. I chained 1 and turned. So just another easy way to think about this is there's puffs around every chain 1 space. we will still always work the single crochets. So there's that puff. Kind of have to work to get it through. And then there's the single crochet right after. Puff. Three times. Oh, and I was thinking I should tell you how many loops are on the hook, just in case you wanted to do 3. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 loops on the hook before I'm pulling through. So here's what my complete row of puffs looks like, and it is, you'll feel like, it's so separated out, but once we do the next row of mesh, it kind of pulls itself back together. There you go. Okay, so again, single crochet and chain 1 over the puffs. Look for that next single crochet. Chain 1, skip the puff, work over here. And there we go. So this is our mesh stitch with puffs, and I think you have got it. Oh, aha, but don't forget 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, it's time. No, not on this row. Oh my gosh, I'm losing my mind. Keep doing the mesh, and then we will go back to putting, just the 1 puff across the row. Okay, another thing I wanted to tell you is that, you don't have to do, sometimes if you're going to choose different yarn, it's going to be bigger. Maybe you don't want this to be quite so rectangular here. Of course, you can only do 6 puffs before you do a row. It's just completely up to you. But I still suggest doing a practice swatch so you can kind of estimate, what the yarn that you choose is going to do with the pattern, how big it will be, etc. Okay, so here we go. Just make sure you don't miss this last single crochet down here. There we go. Okay, I think I'll do just a couple rows off camera of more puffs to get it up there, and then let's go ahead and start the mesh stitch border. All right, this is about as much swatch as I think we need to make together. Of course, when you're finishing the blanket, the you'll want to finish it off with 7 puffs at the end, and then do 1 last row of just plain mesh stitch. Then finish, pull a loop free, give it a clip, pull that out, and then weave in your end, and then we will begin the border. Now here's what I use to weave in my end. It's a blunt tip tapestry needle with a large eye, and I just go ahead and I begin by, sometimes I'll just kind of work right away, lock that stitch down, and then I feed the needle in and out several of the stitches in order to hide the end. And it just magically does. So there's no wrong or right way to do this. Just go in and out several times through the work. Kind of splitting sometimes the plies of the yarn. That kind of helps too. When you're done weaving in and out, you just kind of clip the end close to the fabric, and then it disappears. All right, let's begin the border by kind of turning the blanket over so that flat side is facing you. And then that way, if we do pull up a loop in the right hand corner, we're working against the loops, just like it was, a regular row. So I pull up a loop and I chain one, and I'm also going to single crochet right into that same space. Now we're going to work one round of all single crochet around the border first before we get into the mesh stitch. So what I found is the neatest way to do this is actually we're going to skip over that chain, work into the single crochet, and we will work 2 single crochets into the tops of each single crochet across the row. Now here in the corner, we will work 3 single crochets. That'll help us get around the corner. So this is the single crochet, the very last stitch of that row. And now what I want you to do is look ahead, and sometimes you can tell, what the end of each row looks like. A little bit different, but so in order to make it look neat, because sometimes you could put a single crochet there and it's down here and then it goes back up. So I like to pick the same looking spot and work 2 single crochets around the end of one row and then skip a row, so that I don't have to work into this knot right there or that space. I'm kind of working around the chain 1 and turn. Actually, it's just a chain 1. Here it is over here. So I'm finding that kind of makes the work on the side look a little bit neater. So it's 2 single crochets, skip a row, 2 single crochets. And then they're all kind of turning out to be all in the same alignment. Okay, here we are at the bottom of the chain. So first I've got to work, and you know what I think I'm gonna do is, see, this is where you can kind of choose where you want that corner. I think I'm gonna go ahead and make that the corner. Seems like that would be the better choice. Yeah, I like that a lot better. Go ahead and work 3 to round it. And then what I want to do is work into the bottom of the stitch. This is my starting chain. So I want to find that same, because I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to skip over. So here we go. We want them lined up. So I want 2, the bottom of that single crochet. I'm skipping the chain space and working 2 on the, am I saying that right? The bottom side of that single crochet. It's the bottom side of the starting chain. There we go. Okay, I'm to the corner. Just put 3 into that corner. And let's do the same thing up the side. Let's pick the same end of a row and work those 2 stitches. All right, and here we are back to that starting corner. Remember, we only worked the 1 single crochet. So I will finish with 2 single crochets, and I'm going to join with a slip stitch, chain 1, and turn my work. All right, so on this round, that very next stitch I need to work into is the middle stitch. So let's go ahead and work our 3. And now we can begin with the mesh stitch. So let's go ahead and give this a chain 1, skip 1, work single crochet. All right, there's the mesh stitch that you've been doing. Work all the way down to the corner. Okay, here I am approaching the corner. So the first leg of those 3 that work into the corner landed on a single crochet. Now, even though a chain is next for the mesh stitch, I'm breaking the pattern in order to get the 3 single crochets around that middle stitch, and that's totally okay. And then I'll just begin the pattern again. So whichever way you end up approaching the corner, just break the pattern, work the 3 single crochets, and then begin the pattern again. The most important thing is to maintain that mesh stitch. As the corners grow, occasionally you will be chaining over a single crochet from the row below in order to get the mesh stitch pattern going again. So that's the most important thing. It's pretty forgiving. And then you'll always slip stitch to the first stitch of the round, chain 1 and turn, and that's what will make the mesh stitch maintained. So that is really all that you need to know for this blanket. And I really do hope you'll work a little bit of a practice swatch just to see how your gauge is and how, the border is going to work out for you. Let me show you my blanket again. I ended up working, let's see. Each one of these is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 rounds of the mesh stitch border, but I liked it because it gave it that really flat look. So I was going to see if there's a good corner that would kind of tell. So this is me just working the 3 single crochets. It's probably just too hard to tell. But anyway, just, start up with the mesh pattern as soon as you can after coming out of those corners. Match up your single crochets on top of single crochets. All right, we have so much content now on Instagram that I want you to be aware of in our Reels section. If you're on Instagram, I show how to block this blanket. We have story highlights in our Instagram account that you can go back and look at. We're going to try and start doing that with each blanket, of trying to add a little bit more content in there for you. So it's just quick if you're on Instagram. If not, of course, thank you for being here on YouTube. We're so happy to have you here. Please find more details on our website, daisyfarmcrafts.com. The links are down in the descriptions if you're only seeing this on YouTube. And anyway, I just need to thank you all so much for all of your love and prayers throughout the years. Many of you have been following me for a while, that my hope was to become a grandma someday. Now, of course, at first, I always am still going to have a prayer in my heart for my daughter, Hannah, who is still trying to have a baby. So we'll still keep her in our prayers. And but this is my son, Tanner, and his wife that are having our very first grandbaby, and it's a boy. So anyway, lots of pictures of that little guy coming soon. He's born in December. So, all right, you have a wonderful day.